Hello folks, and welcome back to yet another marvelous anime video. The anime and manga scene is a nearly endless landscape with every type of series on offer. However, few genres grip the mind and soul of audiences as fiercely as psychological thrillers. Unlike the traditional thrillers that rely on high-octane action sequences and external threats to push the tension and narrative, these psychological thrillers probe the mind, unravel identities, and force both the audience and its cast to confront the darkness within. In today's video, we're going to bring you 8 of the most mature and mind-bending psychological thrillers ever released. These stories are cerebral, tense, and emotionally charged, placing their characters where the real damage isn't so much the monster or the villain, but their own mind. They present disturbing existential puzzles and moral dilemmas where the line between right and wrong is greatly muddied. They offer no easy answers, but ask all the difficult questions, holding nothing back, inviting a sense of discomfort followed by introspection. They remind us that the human mind, while brilliant, is at the same time fragile. So, join us as we take you on a journey through the most wondrous, but at the same time terrifying landscape of them all, the human mind. Let's begin. Zanku No Terror. Zanku No Terror is a 2014 psychological thriller anime directed by Shinichiro Watanabe, who's famous for Samurai Champloo and Cowboy Bebop. It follows the story of 2 teenage boys called 9 and 12 who break into a government facility and steal a prototype atomic bomb. Declaring themselves to be a group called Sphinx, they threaten to nuke the city of Tokyo unless a cryptic riddle provided by them is solved in time. We soon learn that not all is what it seems, as the 2 young boys are revealed to be survivors of a brutal experiment by the Rising Peace Academy to transform 26 orphan children with genius-level intellects into human weapons. 9 and 12 were the survivors from this experiment and were out on a quest to expose this corrupt organization. As the nation descends into panic, a brilliant detective with a troubled past called Shibazaki is drawn into the case. While his initial pursuit is to bring these individuals that he views as terrorists to justice, he begins to unravel a much larger conspiracy involving the government regarding these boys' haunting past. The anime explores themes of trauma from state experimentation and institutional abuse, alienation and loneliness in modern society, the line between good and evil, and the deep-rooted desire of young people to be acknowledged by the world. With just 11 episodes, Zanku No Terror pulls no punches and offers a complete and impactful psychological thriller experience. The series focuses heavily on the mental and emotional state of its characters, which it uses to build suspense. The conflict is not necessarily physical, but more cerebral in nature, as the show utilizes things like intellectual conflict, moral ambiguity, and social tension to push its narrative forward. There are a lot of mind games as the 2 boys orchestrate elaborate acts of terrorism that are designed intentionally as puzzles and riddles to confound law enforcement and the general public. There's also the ongoing intellectual sparring between Shibazaki and the duo, which creates tension driven by deduction and hidden motives. The show constantly questions whether the boys are heroes, terrorists, or victims. The characters act on conflicting moral frameworks that force the audience to contend with questions that force them to question their own judgment of right and wrong. While the backdrop of the series is set against the threat of a nuclear attack, Zanku No Terror isn't about the action. It's more about the emotional and mental stakes. This anime provides a chilling yet deeply human narrative through its morally complex characters. If you're looking for easy answers, there are none to be found here, as it leaves behind a quiet, resonant echo, the kind that lingers, asks questions, and demands to be remembered. Serial Experiments Lane. Lane Iwakura is a socially awkward middle schooler who belongs to a somewhat dysfunctional family. Both her mother and elder sister are emotionally disengaged from everyone, while her father is completely obsessed with computers. However, her isolated and mundane lifestyle suddenly gets thrown upside down when she starts receiving emails from a girl in her class called Shisa Yomoda. While this in itself might not seem like anything to warrant alarm, the problem lies in the fact that Shisa Yomoda had only recently passed away after committing suicide. Following this message from beyond the grave, a floodgate of strange men and esoteric messages begin to invade Lane's life as she's thrust into a world where the line between reality and fiction becomes increasingly blurred. With the emergence of the Wired, a digital plane where human consciousness can meld with the online space, a grave conspiracy begins to unfold involving those who would seek to use it for nefarious purposes. In the center of it all is Lane, as she's revealed to be the key to it all. The things that Lane begins to experience start to challenge her sense of reality itself, as things like identity, loneliness, mental health, and existential crises begin to emerge to the forefront. The very fate of the world, along with her sanity, hangs in the balance as the world of The Wire and the real world start to collide increasingly. The anime takes you on a surreal and cerebral journey, with many fans drawing comparisons with Neon Genesis Evangelion, which also deals with similar themes. This, however, has been rebuffed by the creator of the show, Chiaki J. Konaka, who claims that he has never watched Evangelion. The pacing for the series is slow, deliberate, and meditative, forcing you to feel the existential unease that's palpable throughout the film. While this psychological thriller doesn't have a killer as such, it's Lane's unraveling sense of self that drives the horror. Every episode only heightens the sense of paranoia, disorientation, and existentialism until it reaches a zenith, engulfing both the characters and the audience. Though on the surface, it might seem like another piece meant to preach about the dangers of technology, as we mentioned, it explores far deeper and more complex themes. Serial Experiments Lane is a complex and haunting psychological thriller that explores the fragility of identity, the boundaries between reality and cyberspace, and the collapse of the self in a hyper-connected digital world. Perfect Blue! Mima Kirigwe had always dreamt of a life beyond what she had. This isn't to say that she was some sort of destitute person. In fact, quite the opposite. Mima was an extremely popular and famous J-pop idol who belonged to an iconic group called Cham. One day, deciding to finally take the leap towards her lifelong dream, she quits her idol group to become a full-time actress. While this does cause outrage amongst her die-hard fans, what follows is something that's much more diabolical than simply the actions of disgruntled fans. A series of strange events starts taking place, and they're initially attributed to an obsessed fan called Me-Mania. Mima discovers a website dedicated to her that eerily features daily diary entries written from her perspective, containing accurate information about her actual day down to its intimate details. What makes it even more disturbing is the fact that her thoughts are exposed with creepy accuracy, along with recordings of her day. Deeply disturbed after having discovered this website, Mima approaches her manager, Rumi, who surprisingly tells her to ignore it and focus on her budding acting career. As the days go by, her manager manages to get an acting gig by pulling some strings. However, the only caveat to this was the fact that the new role required her to film a sexual assault scene, and despite her manager's protestations, Mima agrees to it. Filming the scene, however, proves predictably harrowing and stressful for her. This, combined with the stress from her regular life where she's being stalked and harassed by deranged fans, proves to be too much for her to handle as her mental health begins to deteriorate rapidly. While all this is going on, Mima also begins doubting her decision to leave Cham. She begins to show early signs of the onset of psychosis under pressure. She begins seeing visions of apparitions of herself, claiming to be the real Mima. Not long after, every single individual who had anything to do with her acting career gets murdered one after another. Thanks to her mental health having degraded so much due to these events, Mima begins to suspect herself of the murders. The line between reality and fiction keeps getting murkier by the second for the young girl, and just when you think things couldn't get worse, Me-Mania tries to rape and murder her, calling her an imposter Mima. As things begin to get out of control and Mima begins to lose her touch with reality, a far more insidious plot is revealed, one that will shake Mima's faith in everything she holds to be true and real. Despite the film not featuring grotesque violence, it is replete with scenes intended only for a mature audience. Mima's journey through her fractured psyche as she tries to navigate the maze her mind has turned into will leave you both captivated and perplexed. The series offers critical commentary on the darker side of the entertainment industry, highlighting the toll it takes on the mental health of its employees. Texnolize! Set in the dystopian and crumbling underground city, Lux, we follow the story of a disgraced pit fighter called Ichis who loses each of his limbs after crossing a powerful figure. He's rescued from certain death by a doctor who fits him with experimental prosthetics containing the DNA traces of his mother, thereby undergoing the process called Texnolize. The ruling Lux is comprised of three major factions called the Organo, the Salvation Union, and the Rakan. A tenuous peace is maintained amongst these groups as they rule the criminal and corrupt denizens of this decaying world. We're introduced to a young girl called Ran, who's deemed to be an oracle from the surface world, and she serves as a symbol for the fast-fading human soul. The young girl takes a keen interest in Ichis and guides him along his various adventures. The world of Lux, which was already teetering on the precipice, is finally pushed off the edge with the arrival of a charismatic and charming man called Yoshi. Despite this individual's claims to be a tourist from the surface world, we soon learn that he's here to sow chaos as he views Lux as a human experiment and wants to know the effects of letting humanity run without restraints. To this end, he begins to sow discord amongst the factions, causing an all-out war amongst them. This quickly destroys any semblance of order the city had. A new faction arises called the Class, led by a grotesque figure called Kano, who seeks to conquer the failing city with his biomechanical soldiers called the Shape in order to conquer the surface. Seeking to stop Kano's nefarious plot, the Doctor and Ichis make their way to the world above, only to find it more devastated than their own. They also learn about the true origins of Lux and its citizens, causing the Doctor to lose hope and commit suicide. Upon returning to Lux, Ichis finds the city has fallen and been overrun by the Shapes as he gets news of Ran's death. Fueled by rage, he proceeds to brutally murder Kano. In the end, as the power generators of Lux fail and the city is slowly plunged into darkness, it symbolizes the entropy that has engulfed humanity itself in this series. The violence in Texnolize is often sudden, brutal, and emotionally detached. What this does is, instead of glorifying conflict, it emphasizes its emotional cost and trauma. In the end, nothing remains. Not the Doctor, the organization, Yoshi Kano, or even Ran. The series is nihilistic to the extreme. In fact, it's the primary theme of this series. The decaying city of Lux is filled with characters who often simply go through the motions of existence with no higher or grander purpose to their lives. We don't get an ending that our own sense of morality can comprehend, and it's beyond that. The anime simply exists to show a world that has descended into the void, and there's nothing else to it. There's no catharsis here, just a sense of emptiness that lingers on long after the curtains have fallen on this show. Boogie Pop Phantom. Based on the Boogie Pop light novel series by Kohaku Kadono, Boogie Pop Phantom is a 12-episode anime series directed by Takashi Watanabe and produced by Madhouse Studios. The story is set in a city a month after the appearance of a mysterious pillar of light and 5 years after a bunch of people are killed under mysterious circumstances. We follow an ensemble cast of characters who are mostly high school students who begin to experience events that appear supernatural in nature. This leads to the rapid blurring of things like their perception, memory, and reality as things get quickly out of hand. As more people begin to die, the tales of an urban legend called Boogie Pop begin to emerge as it's blamed for all the mishaps that have taken place. The legend states that anytime something terrible is about to happen, the enigmatic Shinigami-like figure Boogie Pop is not too far off. The story is presented to us in a non-linear fashion, with each episode being told from the perspective of someone totally different. The degree to which these characters affect the primary storyline is varied, but they all contribute to piecing the puzzle together. Due to this, various scenes are shown more than once from different perspectives, with some episodes even being out of sync with the others. All of these things contribute to a sense of paranoia and confusion as trust becomes non-existent. It mirrors how trauma is experienced in real life by people. The series explores the fragile nature of the mind and what we associate with our identity. While there are monsters in this series and people do die, the danger in the series isn't so much the physical aspect of it, but the tension created through the characters' distorted perceptions and memories. The anime acts as a sequel or a side story to the first Boogie Pop novel. We recommend reading the novel or watching the 2019 reboot, Boogie Pop and Others, for better context. This anime doesn't hold your hand, and it leaves its audience in the deep end, trying to make sense of it. If you enjoy cerebral horror tales with a non-linear narrative, then Boogie Pop Phantom will not disappoint. Igorashi no Naku Koro ni. When Keiichi Maebara moves to the quiet and idyllic village of Hinamizawa, he assumes that he'll be leading a rather mundane and unremarkable life in the countryside. However, despite a relatively peaceful start to his life in rural Japan, things quickly get turned upside down. As the village's annual festival, the Watanagashi, approaches, he soon learns the dark truth about this quiet village and his friendly classmates. Keiichi discovers that for the last 4 years, during the time of this festival, people have either died or disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The villagers, unable to explain the reason for this, have begun to dub it the Oyashiro Curse after the name of their local deity. And things don't turn out any differently during Keiichi's first Watanagashi experience either, with the police discovering the corpse of a photographer the day after the festival. It seemed that the photographer had clawed out his own throat for some reason, adding more mystery to this death. However, the deaths don't end there, as a local nurse is found burned beyond recognition not long after. As Keiichi begins to get caught up in the mystery of these murders, a far more cerebral and deadly truth is revealed, one that goes beyond the borders of this small village. Keiichi must grapple with his mental health as he's beset with paranoia, not knowing whom to trust, as even the most innocent face might harbor the dangerous mind of a murderer. The anime tells its story in two main phases: the question arcs, which present the horrific events but leave several unanswered questions, and the answer arcs, which explain the murders and reveal what's really going on with Himanizawa. Each of the question arcs ends in a gruesome death, featuring themes of paranoia and madness, then resets, showing the same events from the perspective of another character with different results. The series features graphic violence involving extensive brutality with regards to children. There's a lot of death and torture involving minors, along with paranoia-induced killings that have the audience reeling over what's real and what's fake. The violence is especially jarring due to the cutesy art style and character design that initially lulls us into a false sense of security. If you're a fan of both body and psychological horror, this series is a must-watch. It masterfully masquerades its horrors beneath a veneer of innocence, only to rip that mask away in a cascade of blood and broken minds. It's a haunting study of human fragility under pressure, the destructive power of isolation, secrecy, and mistrust, as well as the tragedy of repeating the same mistakes without understanding them. Through its looping narrative structure and disturbing transformations of its characters, the series forces viewers to ask difficult questions regarding the fragile nature of the human mind. Erggoxy. The story begins in a domed city called Ramdo, which is inhabited by a sterile and highly controlled society where humans and humanoid androids called autoraves exist in relative harmony. The highly realistic humanoids are used by the populace for a variety of functions, from labor to providing companionship, and are referred to as either companions, these look like humans, or entourage, who appear robotic in nature. Thanks to a series of ecological calamities that took place thousands of years prior to the events of the show, Earth is now in a post-apocalyptic state, and most of the remaining human population lives in domed sanctuaries, one of which is Ramdo. Humanity no longer procreates the regular way, and all birth takes place in artificial birthing wombs only to fulfill a purpose in society. This has led humans to believe that they're no longer capable of reproduction. However, things get interesting when some of these autoraves are equipped with an AI called the Cogito virus, which grants them self-awareness. This is a massive glitch in a dangerously rigid society, and their worst fear comes true when a series of murders are committed by autoraves with the Cogito virus. As the delicate social balance of Ramdo begins to get threatened, the regent of the city assigns his granddaughter, Riel, to investigate these murders alongside her autorave, Iggy. During her investigation, she's attacked by a mysterious monstrosity that calls itself the Proxy. Riel is soon drawn into a mind-bending conspiracy that threatens to shake the very foundation of Ramdo and humanity itself. The Proxy was revealed to be a secret experiment conducted by the founders of the domed cities and was said to hold the key to humanity's survival. This knowledge begins to slowly shatter Riel's reality as everything she had once stood for and believed begins to crumble under the weight of the emerging truth. We're also introduced to an immigrant called Vincent who had arrived at Ramdo from another city called Moscow. He intends to become a full citizen of Ramdo, but is falsely accused of the murders taking place in connection with the Proxy. Vincent soon discovers that he himself might be a Proxy, specifically Proxy 1, as he's forced to flee the city. As his reality begins to unravel around him, along with Riel and an autorave called Pino who has the Cogito virus, they travel through the ruined and desolate world in an airship. They intend to piece together the clues from this broken world about the Proxies, the Cogito virus, and the reason the world was destroyed. The series dives heavily into themes of existentialism as characters struggle with the fear of being meaningless without any purpose and not even being real. There's no good or evil in this desolate world, and everything is ambiguous. For instance, Vincent appears weak and without agency, but is in fact a godlike being. When Dai Sato, the writer for the series, was asked about his influences, he replied that he was heavily inspired by French philosopher Descartes' work on two personalities within a single body. In this series, the truth is the real threat and the battlefield is the mind. If this sort of thing appeals to you, then Erggoxy will take you on a mind-bending journey that you won't forget anytime soon. Shinskai Yori. Based on the novel by Yusuke Kishi comes a 25-episode-long anime adaptation called Shinskai Yori, also known as From the New World. In an alternate future, the world has been devastated after the emergence of human beings with psychic abilities in the year 2011. Not long after these powers begin to manifest, people begin to use them for various nefarious purposes, which leads to a breakdown in society and the devastation of the human race. Eventually, these psychic humans establish a utopia where peace is maintained through genetic modifications and social conditioning. The true history of mankind is hidden from the newer generation as the children are constantly watched and controlled. They are taught to believe that their society is a utopia. However, as they slowly begin to learn the true nature of their paradise, a web of lies, propaganda, and erased memories begins to resurface. We're told this story through the eyes of Saki Watanabe, who's born in the idyllic village of Kamisu 66, where everybody is a psychic. During an unsupervised school excursion, they encounter a relic technology that reveals to them the true nature of their power and the origins of their world. This small fracture in the carefully constructed web of deceit begins to eat at Saki and her friends as they begin to push against the system to uncover the real truth. The story touches on several hard-hitting topics like eugenics, propaganda, slavery, and racism, challenging their moral grounds. It paints a devastating picture of the hidden decay within a utopia and asks questions regarding what's considered ethical in the pursuit of maintaining this illusion. We get to see Saki grow up from an idealistic young girl to a woman hardened by her circumstances, painting one of the bleakest depictions of innocence lost. The soft, almost storybook-like visuals are sharply contrasted by the brutal violence and psychological oppression that permeates this series. If you love stories with seriously high moral stakes featuring themes of suicide, genocide, and psychological trauma, then Shinskai Yori is the anime for you. Marvelous verdict! In the end, these anime that we've mentioned don't really scare you as much as they unsettle your very being, and that's what makes them truly unforgettable. Unlike traditional horror or thriller series, these psychological horror animes don't rely on simple jump scares or monsters. They burrow into the very psyche of the audience, confronting viewers with uncomfortable truths about reality, identity, trauma, and morality. Series like Igorashi, Perfect Blue, Shinskai Yori, and Erggoxy show that the most terrifying horror isn't supernatural, it's the fragility of the human mind, the thin boundary between perception and reality, and the darkness we all carry within. These stories linger long after the screen fades to black because they reflect something deeply personal. Our doubts, our guilt, our helplessness in the face of forces both internal and external that we cannot control. In peeling back the layers of illusion, psychological horror anime dares to shine a light on the darkest recesses of humanity that we try to keep hidden at all costs. These narratives unravel the illusion of safety and expose the terrifying truth. The greatest horrors are often the ones we create ourselves. Unlike action-driven horror, psychological horror is subtle, creeping, and disorienting. It forces both characters and viewers to question reality, morality, and sanity. In Perfect Blue, fame erases identity. In Shinskai Yori, peace is maintained by genocide and repression. What makes these stories so disturbing is not just what happens on screen, but what they leave unsaid and unresolved. Psychological horror doesn't tie things up neatly, it leaves open wounds and unanswered questions, haunting the viewer long after the credits roll. We hope that you enjoyed watching this video as much as we loved making it. Thanks for sticking with us right to the end of this one, and if you want more videos like it, be sure to check out the rest of our channel, where we post daily videos featuring all of your favorite anime and manga. We hope to see you soon in the next one. Until then, stay safe and stay marvelous.